Hey guys, Matt from Wildcard Production here. I know what you're thinking. Why are you making another Log Horizon video when you just released a video saying you're making more Diabolic Lovers videos? And well, that's why. I'm about to start purging my hard drive and start clearing up room for clearing room for Diabolic Lovers Abridged. Before I delete it, I figured I might as well share the breakdown and I guess a little bit of a commentary of these two episodes with you guys. If I were to walk you through the breakdown the way other people do it, the breakdown would look something like this, or the workspace would look something like this. But so I don't know how this happened, why this happened, or how I even fixed this. But for some reason, mid-project, the scale ratio of the scenes changed. And because of that, everything was off. Things now look like this instead of how they should look. And to fix that, again, I don't remember exactly how I fixed it, but it involved rendering it into a completely new video. And from here, a lot of the audio still exists, but we still have the video to work with here. So this one was very tricky because all the ideas we have for this series basically started episode 2. So episode 1 was a real struggle just to get the pieces in place. So I actually altered the music here to make it fit the scene and just tried to go for kind of an epic opening with I don't know, this is a pretty stupid joke, but it kind of ties in later. I agree with a lot of the criticism that comes with this. It's a bit of a weak episode. It's kind of dragged out. And that's the other thing. I wanted this to be a slower, smarter show than Diabolic Lovers was. And I think I was trying so hard to make it different from Diabolic Lovers that I kind of overextended it and just dragged the jokes out a little too much. But most of this episode was actually written late, I want to say 2015. Yeah, late 2015. What the hell? So the biggest things of note here would probably be, well, there's that, but the glitching bird sequence. We wanted to do something a little more active with the guard animation, but at least with season 1, I think in season 2 as well, I did look there. We don't really get much other than still shots of the Guardians, at least not in full body. So we ended up having to do a cutout and just kind of sliding them across, making a bit of a... This one, if I remember right, Fat Dog Studios said they had trouble looping this one as well. That's why they ended up being very clever about it and putting it in as a reflection in Shiro's glasses. I didn't think about that at the time, and I tried my best to loop this, and it's not a complete loop, but it works fairly well, I think. So in my projects, I like to hide flying whoopers. And this is not the last episode you'll see him in, so be sure to keep your eyes open for him in the future. The more significant thing in this scene comes from here. So at this point, we kind of made a joke poking at... we made a joke poking at Fat Dog here. They were pretty proud of their canon that they added in there, so we added our own canon. Just to poke fun at them, you know, nothing malicious or anything, but the thing is, each time we come to this scene, the canon changes. So here we have an actual canon. Here we have a Canon camera. That's just some subtle things we like to play with here. So the hardest edit, by far, was removing Natsuku from this shot here. It wasn't easy, but we wrote ourselves into a corner here because we were trying to do something that scenes did not exist for. So we had to deliver it through audio. But since Natsuku had to be delivering the audio, he couldn't be on screen, otherwise that would ruin the delivery. So I had to remove him from the shot and make it look like he was off the frame. And I ended up doing that just by very careful placement of this, I think it's the shot where they come in, by taking one of these shots here, taking one of the shots from this shot here and imposing it onto this one here. I did further remove bits and pieces from Natsugu, but I was able to get him out of the frame, and I think I was able to keep some of the motion, the particle motion that was going on at the time as well. So around this time, my computer started acting up for some reason. Like I said, the scales for some reason changed, and I had to fix it by putting this whole thing like that into one video slot. And yeah, it was getting a little nerve-wracking because I was almost finished, and I was worried that it was going to, Premiere was just going to crash and fail on me. So I ended up rushing it a little bit, and there are some pretty big editing mistakes. I won't point them out. But, yeah, this episode was kind of an episode that we were just trying to get over with, which is horrible for the hook of the series, but we're building up to something here, and we're going to make it pay off. So if you're just checking it out, or you're sharing it with a friend, make sure you give it a few episodes before you judge it. If you're going to share it, I recommend sharing the second episode, just because it's better done. And let them go back and see the first episode, that way they can watch it knowing it gets better. Another point where I ran into a problem with the writing was around the phone call with Natsugu here. We had to really slow down the scene to make it fit with our audio. And just because of the lack of variety of scenes here, we actually had to cut out a bit here, which we have our deleted scene for. But yeah, we really had to improvise, really had to slow it down, and then make it look like we didn't slow down by slowly zooming in on it. Several tricks we had to do to keep the pacing good. So one of our tricks we do, like I said, from that one scene, we had to remove the original show's pacing in order to add our own pacing. So what I do is I take this as a still, and I sync Shiro's audio. I export this as a video, and then from there I put it into the actual episode, where I can zoom in on it as a whole rather than as individual pieces. And I know you can nest, but nesting, I've noticed with this, maybe it's just my copy, but nesting has a tendency to be buggy. It tends to crash Premiere. And just the bigger the sequence is, or the bigger the nest is, the more likely it is to crash. So I tend to just be safe and make a separate sequence for it. But yeah, from here I just take that and zoom it, play with it as I will, and that way I can just do it with one video rather than individual pieces. And it's very helpful with scenes that are moving, like this one here where Akatsuki is stretching. I had to use a green screen because the transparency doesn't want to work for some reason. But yeah, I would just key in this green screen of her lip flap here and use that and just move that along with her. And I'd move that flap along with the character's motion to make it look like it was, animated that way. Admittedly, this is a little clunky, it's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job of making it look like that's how it was animated. Fat Dog admittedly stole a lot of the good jokes from here, but one of the reasons why we actually decided to go through with this was because it was clear in later episodes of their series that they had a different idea than we did, and from this point, it would be very different. We'd be taking a very different direction. And yeah, we could have both of our series stand separate from each other, respectively. I think overall, the episode, what we had in mind was good. Writing-wise, if you're really paying attention, you really think about it, everything kind of connects, and it's a good episode conceptually. It's just we didn't have footage and the editing skills to deliver it as well as we needed it to. So I do agree that it's both, as much as I say it's a bad episode, as much as I'm hypercritical about myself, it has its flaws, but overall, I don't think it's a bad episode. Overall, this episode, editing-wise, I don't know. I really don't know what to say. It was really just, I wanted to get it over with so that I can actually start the series. This one just puts the pieces in place. That being said, I'll go ahead and open episode 2. So while this is loading here, I'll go ahead and give you guys some background on this story, on Log Horizon Abridged. Log Horizon Abridged for us actually starts back late 2015. I was in a group, or I had auditioned for the part of Shiro, and they ended up giving me the part. It was this group, I was the 4th member of this group. And they saw what I did with Diabolic Lovers, they loved it. They invited me to be a part of the writing and just part of the project itself. And I ended up becoming the 4th member of this group. Well, there was a big difference in writing. That's actually where I met Anthony, my co-writer. And there's a big difference in writing with the other 2 members. But more importantly, there was a lack of commitment in the other 2 members. It was just me and Anthony pulling our weight. The other guy who was supposed to edit it had his plate full, and I was busy with Diabolic Lovers at the time, so I couldn't edit it myself. And honestly, at the time, I wasn't good enough as an editor to get it what it needed to be. So in the beginning, we didn't really know what we were going to do with this series. And we were working on it, and then Anthony said something that just made it click for me. He said, what if Shiro really was the villain in glasses? And that blew my mind. It gave me this whole new idea. See, what we're doing here is a little experimental. It's actually probably not accurate to call it an abridged series, even though that's how it started. I've actually considered renaming it like Log Horizon Reborn or something like that. Let me know what you guys think about that. But because people have commented that this is not actually a real abridged series, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong. But I also don't care. But if you think renaming it is a good idea, let me know. Where was I? So yeah, when Anthony said that, it just made it click for me. And so what we're doing here isn't just an abridged series. It's not just a parody. We are rewriting the story. We are recreating it into something new. We're revamping it, making it something new. And it's a lot more work, but just the ideas we have for it are really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to getting to it. And episode 2 here is where... I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's back up. So the group fell apart, but I ended up holding on to it because I really loved what we had in mind for the show. And I was planning to hold on to it until after I was done with Diabolic Lovers. And then Tiba happened. After I saw Fat Dog Studios' Tiba entry, I actually messaged them and told them about the situation. They were very cool about it. They agreed that we will have we'll give each other a hand, but we'll acknowledge each other, but our projects are separate. We are not affiliated with them, they're not affiliated with us, even though we poked fun at them. But yeah, it was just that was kind of the mentality we were going with until the results of Tiba happened. And when Curtis gave, Fat Dog there his seal of approval, that's when they really took off, and well, it was kind of heartbreaking at the time because, and this still kind of proved true, but I knew at that time that anything we did with this series would just be completely overshadowed by theirs. It'd be like trying to make a Dragon Ball Z abridged right now. There's no way it would get any traction because everybody's looking at, Team 4-Star. And it was kind of heartbreaking at the time. I actually offered them everything I had, all the ideas I had for the series. I offered to give it to them freely because I'd rather them have it than it just not happening. If they like it, they can do it. If not, whatever. They ended up not taking it. And honestly, I'm glad I did, because as I waited, I not only got better as an editor, I was able to, but they got a few more episodes out, and if I could be brutally honest, I haven't been as impressed with their work since episode 1. That might just be because I have a different vision for the series, but that's just it. When it became clear that we had completely different visions for the series, that's when I decided to bring it back. And just as I predicted, when I did finally get it back, I actually had to wait 2 months for the first episode to get through the copyright system. It was supposed to be out by Thanksgiving, and it ended up being out by New Year's. The reception has been mostly positive but pretty mixed, and it's been very slowly growing, which I expected. But hopefully, given a little context to the story, why it happened, where it's coming from, you understand not only why it happened, but where we're going with this. This is going to be something very different. It's very experimental. So this episode here, episode 2, turned out much better because we actually had something for this episode. This was the episode where what we had in mind starts to unravel, or we start to reveal what we have in mind for this show. And like I said, if you guys share this, make sure you introduce people through the second episode. I think that will overall give people a better impression. So this one looks a little more like your average breakdown. Shut up. So Log Horizon is much harder to edit than Diabolic Lovers because it's so dynamic. It's so fluid. And just to keep that motion, I want to keep that motion in the abridged series, or in this series. I want to keep that motion in this series, so a lot of the transplants I have to do aren't necessarily transplants from different scenes as much as they are transplanting the same scene onto itself to keep it dynamic. That happens especially like right here, trying to keep all the coins and stuff moving. So the toughest part of this episode was the fight sequence. We had to rearrange the fight in order to rewrite it and make Shiro the aggressor rather than the defender. So we had to cut it to where Akatsuki comes out earlier in the fight with probably one of my favorite jokes here. And then, just making Shiro editing in Shiro. I kind of had to cheat with this one and create my own little effect here. And I kind of had to animate myself here. But, I had to create a attack for Shiro here. Have him react to it. So I kind of had to animate this sequence myself here. But, I had to add in Shiro's attack here and just time it so that they were slowly gaining the upper hand on the bad guys here, on the player killers here. And just, rearrange it to where they were slowly gaining the upper hand on the player killers here. And I had a little fun with the audio here, just playing with audio effects and stuff. Tom did a fantastic job with this player killer, from the scream to everything else. But yeah, this episode in general was more plot than comedy. And I knew that fairly well coming into it, but I still think it's funny in places, and also just the plot itself I think is very entertaining, very, it's different from a typical abridged series, but that's what makes it experimental. Also, I had to edit onto a video player onto here so that, and, find a way to make it look like Natsuku's watching porn from an anime character standpoint. I had to find a way to make it look like Natsuku was watching porn without actually watching porn and, getting a copyright strike on my channel. And this old video of MMD Luca twerking, this old MMD video of Luca twerking just kind of fit the bill. So I ended up using that. This in general, a lot of this was crafted around the music I used. I had to kind of mix the scenes a bit, make them work, stretch them out, make them work with the scene, with the music. But yeah, Shiro's monologue here, maybe a little overdone, but you get the point. It really sets it up, and this whole sequence here was originally supposed to be a continuation of the monologue, but at this point it was already beginning to feel overdone, so we cut it and just had this build up of them walking through the forest, just kind of, building tension. You think they're going to get, if you know the show, the player killer scene's coming, so you think, they're going to get attacked, and then, nope, they're attacking. I really should have dedicated it into the ending here, but I have to give a huge shout out to Dr. Applejuce, because I actually let him just peer review it for me when at the point where I thought it was done. And so I sent it to him, and he says, yeah, it looks good. You're still working on the sound effects, right? I was like, and we ended up talking about it. And I was telling him, yeah, it could definitely use a little more sound effect. I could add more sound effects to it, but, I just don't have them. I have trouble finding them. And he ended up sending me his entire sound effect library, and I was able to use it to really bring it to life. And it made a huge difference overall. Like, even little sounds like clothing, footsteps, just every little sound here, every little detail has a sound. And just including that, even faintly, just gave it so much life. And it was just really incredible. This episode, I really found the balance when it came to audio mixing. I finally kind of figured it out. Like, I've always been kind of toying with it and experimenting with it since I learned how to do it. And I think this episode is where I really found out how to I finally found a balance that I like. You can hear the characters, but it's still immersive. The trickiest scenes in this one had to be also the most obnoxious scene to edit in this one was the forest walking scene here. The problem is, in the actual show, like, this ended up being a quiet walk in the woods. But in the actual show, they're talking while they're walking. So like before with moving scenes, we had to create a separate sequence, sync it there, and then transplant that and move it along with the character. And the problem with Log Horizon is that the character's movement is so jarring and so sudden that just trying to sync it was a nightmare. I almost had to go by frame and just move the mouth over where it needed to be. So, frame where it needed to be. That was just a huge pain in the ass, but... So my work is heavily influenced by Mel Brooks, which means the fourth wall means absolutely nothing to me. And while I understand the argument that it kind of breaks what we're building up here, I understand why preserving the fourth wall is important. I also find it hilarious when it's broken. So, I ended up breaking it here, and the ending was a little awkward to me. So I just decided to continue rolling with the fourth wall break and having him just take over the episode and do the editor's job for him, basically. And that just created a much more solid ending to me. That just created a much more solid ending. But, yeah, I mean, these episodes are very... I mean, you can see other people, like... I remember there was a time when people like Leafy would put his workspace on here, and it would just be like 1 line of video and 3 lines of audio. And that's something that could be done in a day. But this is literally took up to 12 lines of video. Not all of that was necessary, but for me it took 12 lines of video and over 30 lines of audio just to get all this, bring this to life. That's very time consuming, it's a lot of work. So I hope you understand why these take as long as they do. I'm very self-critical, very much perfectionist, so that does add to it, but you can see the results, and it's definitely worth it. I just wanted to share them with you before I start purging them from my hard drive. I will be starting Diabolic Levers real soon, and after that, we'll be right back to this. Till then, be patient and ring that bell. Make sure you subscribe and, do all that stuff. Like and share it, and yeah, follow us on Twitter. That's where I'll be putting a lot of updates on how things are going. But as well as a lot of other funny stuff. But yeah, until next time, I'll catch you guys later.